most modern models use a method of materials, aka textures, aka what gives your model color and makes things look like cloth or skin. Materials are made up of textures. That modern method is called PBR. It stands for physically based rendering. If your model uses the new method, it will have a set of usually around 4 or 5 textures for each material. So if you go to your textures folder and you see files that say diffuse or albedo, which are kind of used interchangeably, although they're not entirely the same thing. If you see textures in your texture folder that say metalness, roughness, or any kind of abbreviation for metalness or roughness, that kind of a thing, then you have a model that uses PBR. If you only see a diffuse and a normal, or sometimes it's abbreviated to D and N, or diff, chances are it's a model from a long time ago. The source engine doesn't support PBR materials. It doesn't support things that use metalness and roughness textures. But there is methods to adjust these textures and kind of adapt them to the source engine, and each method varies in difficulty. So here are the 3 methods that I'm including. BlueFlyTrap's pseudo-PBR method looks the best. It's amazing. It's as close to actual PBR in the source engine as you can get. But as it says, it's very hard. It just takes forever. So we're going to start with Fennecai's. So in the folder where you have the original textures for your model, we are going to start off with the first material. But first, let's open up our model in Blender really quick. So we're back in Blender, not for long. We're just here to check on the material names. Let's start with her coat. I'm going to select her body, and we're going to go down to the materials tab and look at the Anna Bray coat material. So in Blender, within the materials tab, the materials listed here are what you are going to name your materials in your add-ons folder. In your Garry's mod add-ons and Playermodel folder in here, in the materials folder, you're going to name your materials after these. So first of all, we need to make the correct folder, because if you remember, when we were editing the QC earlier, there was a command, cd materials, right here. So this is the structure that we need to make really quick in our add-on folder within Garry's mod. So we're going to go to Garry's mod add-ons, our add-on folder, materials, and now we are going to make this exact folder structure. So we're going to make another folder called models, and then we're making a folder within that folder called Timbleweeds, and then another folder called Destiny_Anna. This is where our textures will reside, our materials and our textures. They're 2 separate things. But yeah, they have to be named after all of these materials. Go to where your textures are, and here are the files for her coat. So there's diffuse, MRC, and normal. You will probably not have 3, probably have 4 or 5. So we're going to make a new folder, and we're just going to name it Fennecai Trickified. That's my official term for it. So in my case, I do have a metalness and roughness, but it is within the same image file because Bungie is weird and they just decided to combine the metalness, the roughness, and the ambient occlusion into a single file instead of separate files. So I have to separate these into individual image files before I can start. You probably won't have to do that. So what we are going to want to do now is we're going to go to the new version of Blender. We're going to, okay, so just go to open and navigate to where you saved PBR-to-Source.blend file. Click open, and you will be met with this GUI menu. So you're going to click on this, click tab, and now you will be brought to this page where you can input all of your PBR textures. Start with metallic, click on this, to navigate to wherever you have your model's original textures, which is right here, and So here is my roughness, my normal, my metalness, my diffuse, and my ambient occlusion. So we're going to click metalness, open. So there's it is for metallic. And then base color is diffuse or albedo. And then roughness is usually roughness or _R. If you have a glossiness map, you will need to open it in GIMP or Photoshop and then invert the colors and then save it as roughness. And that's how you convert gloss to a roughness map. And this assumes you're using roughness, not gloss. And then normal. If you have an emissive, you can open an emissive, but there is no emissive for her coat material. That's that. Press tab to close it, and then we're going to go to outputs. Click on this, press tab again, click here, and then we're going to go to that folder I made earlier, Fennecai trickified, accept, and then click here where you just changed the folder path, and you're going to Control-C to copy the whole path, and then Control-V it on all these other nodes. Press tab again. And now we're going to go up here, click render, render image. And once that's done, when it's done, it'll just change a little bit, and then we can X these out. Don't save because we're going to use it again later. Now we go to Fennecai trickified, and here are our source engine textures that we're going to be using for the coat material. You'll notice that there's a lot more textures in here than just coat, because there's cloak, there's eye, there's gloves, hair. So that was just the coat that we did. We need to convert these to Valve texture format first. So go get VTF edit. So here's VTF edit, and we're going to drag the base color onto the exe. And you're going to want to set normal and alpha to DXT5 and check the generate maps box. Leave everything default. Leave all this stuff unchecked. Click OK. And then we're going to go to File, Save As, and we're going to navigate to our Garry's Mod folder. In Garry's Mod, we're going to go to Add-ons and our Playermodel folder, Materials, Models, and into the empty materials folder, and we can actually name this anything because the texture file names aren't what matters, it's the material file names. So we're saving these as VTF. So coat_diff for diffuse, and save it. Okay, that's one down, and then we're gonna go to the normal, and we're going to keep the same settings. Might look like this, which is fine. There's technical reason for that, but I'm not gonna get into it because it's really crazy. Coat_normal. If you're wondering what the normal map is, it basically just defines surface details like scratches. And then phong, you're gonna drag that in there too. You can keep all this the same as well. And it hangs a little bit for a while after you import something because it has to convert as well as compress coat phong. Okay, so now we have all the textures needed to set up the material. Go back to the Fennecai folder where the blend is, and there should be a thing that says template material.bmt, and we're going to copy that and bring that into our Garry's Mod add-on folder, where the textures we just saved are. And this is what needs to be named after the material, the corresponding material in Blender. The material name is Anna Bray Coat. I'll copy that and I will rename template material to that. There we go. So this is the material file, and the material file is essentially more code that points at these and tells the game what to do with it. This is the material. These are the textures that the material uses. We're going to use the same material path that QC file calls for, which is this path, material models, Timbleweed's Destiny Anna. So we're going to start it with models because, as I said, the materials folder is assumed by the engine, so you don't have to put it there. So models. And this is the base texture, which is the diffuse or albedo. So coat_diff, type that. You don't have to do the .vtf. You can leave that blank. So just coat_diff. And then we're going to copy this entry and we're going to paste it here. And we're going to change this. This is the bump map command, and we're changing it from diff to normal, because a normal is also known as a bump map. And then under phong, we're going to copy this path yet again, get rid of the brackets, and name it coat_phong, pointing to this file. You'll notice that when we made these files in the Fennecai blend, there was no option for ambient occlusion. So I'm going to go back to the original textures folder, the unconverted textures, and here is my ambient occlusion texture. I could just turn this into a VTF and then put the path to it right here like we did for these. But I don't know if it's just me, but I don't think the ambient occlusion texture material parameter works in Garry's mod the way people think it does. I never notice a difference when I use this. So I'm actually going to comment out that command to disable it. Commenting out is just putting 2 slashes. And I am actually going to open up coat diffuse from the Fennecai version, and I'm going to open the ambient occlusion, copy this, paste in place as a new layer, and set the mode to multiply. Alright, so now that I redid the diffuse with the ambient occlusion map multiplied over it and saved it as a new VTF, I'm going to change the base texture input to coat_diff_multiply. Okay, so that should be the first material technically completed. First, we're going to load up the game to make sure it worked. If it did, then her coat will be textured, but the rest of her will still be missing texture, purple checkerboards. That isn't the end of it, because we still have to mess with these parameters and maybe even add some of our own to get it looking just right. Hey, look at that. We need to adjust things. As you can clearly tell, her shoulder pad is not metallic, and it needs to be. It might look a little bit odd using Fennecai's normal that it generated, the normal map. And if it does look odd, try converting the unaltered normal map into a VTF, then saving it as under a new name and changing the bump map name to new normal VTF that is unedited. And sometimes it can look better than the one that the Fennecai blend generates. I also made the mistake of loading this model up on flat grass, which is not a good idea because the lighting is very flat. Yes, that pun was intentional. So something like construct or map with good lighting. So it still looks a little bit odd. It looks like it's not being affected by lighting. And I think that has something to do with the Fennecai normal. So I'm going to Alt-Tab, actually. When you are messing with materials, you can leave Garry's mod open and just Alt-Tab, and then make your adjustments, and then tab back into the game. And it should update the materials that are already there. So in this instance, I'm going to go create a normal.vtf, and then we can just tab back into Garry's mod. And that's what it looks like with the normal, normal. And I already think that looks a lot better. It's too shiny, but we can fix that. The shoulder pad is still not metallic, and that's probably something we're going to have to fix ourselves. We need to make it less shiny. And what determines shininess is phong. The things that you're going to pay attention to are the phong boost value and the phong Fresnel ranges. So phong boost is just a general, it just makes the effect stronger, so it's set to 8. So let's lower that to 5 and see what that looks like. And already that is an improvement. It still looks a little bit too wet though, so let's change it to, how about 2? Let's see what 2 looks like. Okay, I think that is pretty close to a realistic amount of shininess for what this material is supposed to be. I think I'll leave it at that for now. I might change it later. What we need to focus on now are the Fresnel ranges. In this case, it's pretty good the way it is, but if you do need to adjust the phong more, what the Fresnel ranges does is it essentially determines how much the material looks shiny depending on what angle you're looking at it from. These numbers indicate how strong the shininess is going to be from each angle. The first number dictates how shiny it is looking at it straight on. The second number indicates how shiny it's going to look looking at it from a sort of a side view like this. Last number indicates how shiny it's going to be when looking at it at a grazing angle, so like this or something. So I really encourage you to just mess with values and see what happens. Just mess with the value, save the file, open up Gmod, see what it changes, and then go back, and if you don't like it, just undo. There's the undo button, and then just save again. That's honestly the best way for me to learn, because if you try to go to the Valve developer wiki and look up what each material parameter does, it's just overly complicated. So yeah, with the Fennecai method, that's basically all there is to it. You're just going to do that process for the rest of the materials. Copy the coat material or the material that you just made, copy it, and then make a new version, rename it to whatever next material you're going to do. We finished this, so we would probably move on to like the pants or whatever. So Anabray pants, you would just copy that, and then for instance do that, rename, paste it, and then open it, and once you have the new textures saved to VTF, just change these entries right here from coat. In my case, it would be pants. The next thing that we're going to want to do is focus on her cape, because as I mentioned before, her cape is one-sided. We're going to copy the coat material that we just made, and we are going to paste it, and we are going to rename it to the material her cape has applied to it in Blender. So we name the coat copy to Anabray cloak and open it up. And we're going to actually minimize this for now because we don't have the textures for the cloak yet. So we're going to do the same thing that we did for the coat. Okay, I have her cape converted to VTF now using Fennecai, and I also converted the original normal and the Fennecai version of the normal with the _fen for short suffix, so that I can distinguish them and actually switch between the two while I'm messing with the material. So now we're going to open up the cloak material that we renamed, and we are going to go through, I don't know why that closed itself. We are going to go through this and replace the coat with the new cloak, aka cape texture names. And as we said, it doesn't render properly because it only renders one side. To fix that, we're going to add the material parameter nocull 1. Back in Garry's mod, you'll notice that nothing changed, and that's because it hasn't loaded the new material that we just made. If an existing material is changed, such as the coat, the changes are immediately reflected as soon as you tab back into the game, which is super helpful. But new materials, like the one that we just created by creating a copy of the coat material, you will need to open the console and type in mat_reload all materials and press enter, wait a good 10 seconds or so. And there we go. Now her cape is here and the nocull is working because we can see it from both sides. Cool. And it looks really flat. Erase the _fen prefix to switch it to the unedited normal map. Okay, cool. It looks a little bit like too bright, like it's kind of glowing. I could probably fix that later on. The only other material parameter that you really need to know about is alpha test, which I think is what we're going to be using on the hair and eyelashes here, and emission, which is what we're going to be using for her little holographic eye implant things, because I didn't even know she had those until I started this project. Okay, so I have the hair set up, I have the hair material file set up, and I have added alpha test 1, which is the command that we're going to need to make the edges of the hair texture transparent, because otherwise it'll be all one solid block and it will look weird. So with this applied, we can go in game and you'll see that the hair is completely gone except for a few strands. It just looks like balding. And the reason why that is because alpha test by default just applies transparency to the texture just in general. So we are going to add another parameter called alpha test reference, and we are going to use a number value as we did with this one, but this is just 0 or 1 to enable or disable, but this is going to be a value like these are that defines how much transparency it applies to the hair. So I'm going to try 0.1. Okay, that's better, but it's still not quite enough. So let's try 0.01. I don't even know if that's possible, but we're just experimenting at this point. Oh, look at that. That's actually a lot closer to what we want. The next thing that we're going to focus on is the eyes, because of the emission parameter, which makes things glow. And if you are using actual source engine method of rendering eyes, you will not be able to use the emission shader. You will not be able to make eyes glow, because that is a limitation of rendering eyes using the source engine method. It's not compatible with the emission shader for some reason, and there are no known workarounds, at least that I know of at this time. I'm going to get the eye textures converted to VTF. Okay, so I have the eye set up. If you have an emission texture with your model, you could put it through Fennecai's generator, and then you're meant to use a self-illume command and self-illume mask or self-illume texture command, I think, but it won't look very good in my opinion. So I'm going to show you how to do emissive blend instead. You don't need to put it through Fennecai or anything, just take the emission texture and put it directly into VTF edit, change it to a VTF. This we're going to paste in this block of commands. These are all the things necessary for emissive blend. Right now it's set to Mara's textures, which we are going to change to Anna's really quick by copying this and just replacing this bit. This one right here in the middle points to the emission texture. In our case, it's I_emission, so I'm going to copy that. And the other two are for if your texture moves or scrolls. Ours isn't a moving texture, so we have it set to null. It will look for a blank texture file called null in the materials folder. And we don't have it here, but it is included in the template zip that I gave you. So copy the null.vtf and paste it into here. Now, these two commands will work correctly. If you do not copy the null VTF into your materials directory, it will load the purple checkerboard texture. It says what each of these commands does on the side here. Now it is set to a strength of 5 with a tint of 444. In my case, my emission texture is pure white, so it will make the little hologram thingies, these, glow pure white in game. And we don't want that, because as you can see, her eyes are like this weird orange color. So what we're going to do is we're going to mess with these three parameters down here, and what these control is the color. Since mine is pure white, each number here stands for RGNB. So this one is red, this one's green, this one's blue. Since they're all equal, it'll glow white. So I have set it to 4 on red, 1 on green, and 1 on blue. So in game, it's indeed glowing, and it's kind of orange, but it isn't the same orange. And also, it is glowing too bright compared to the original Blender version. So we are going to turn down the strength to a lower value as well. All right, so I think that looks about right. If you want the glow to not be as strong and lowering the strength value in the VMT doesn't work, you could always just lower the intensity of the color in GIMP. In this case, mine is pure white. So I would just lower the intensity of that and then resave the VTF, and it wouldn't be as bright or brilliant. But yeah, that's about it for texturing using the Fennecai method.